is ready. Are you ready? Yeah. Great, because I'm not. It's just one of those things, right? You come out to an event and you're like, I'm going to do this. And then your hand ends up, oh, that's not too bad, actually. That looks pretty all right. My name is Werner Smit. Don't worry if you can't pronounce it. It's a difficult German name, so don't stress. I'm a delivery lead with Equal Experts. They're a cool company that I've worked for, and that's one of the places where community has become really important to me. The reason why I chose this topic was, one, Robert obviously badgered me into it, and the second one was it's something that I really enjoy. It's important to me. Can I be in front of the... Okay, cool, no stress. I've spent the last sort of 9 years of my life building teams as a profession. It's what I do. I started life out as a Java developer. Never studied Java, but developed Java my entire life, and then started building teams. And for the first couple of years, I couldn't understand why when I build a team structure, it's actually brittle, because all the rules are in place. Everything is going the way it's supposed to go, and yet, when that team is challenged on their ways of working, they crumble. And I could never figure out why that happened. It didn't make sense to me. So eventually, after experimenting a lot, and there we created a team at MultiChoice back in the day, and that's where it really hit home for me, is it's more than team. It's actually creating a community. People who have sort of like-minded interests, and they actually want to be in that space, and they're willing to defend that space's sovereignty. So I'll kick off with some cliches, definitions, because what would a talk be without some cliches? So what is a community? A community is a group of people living in the same place or having a particular characteristic in common. That's it. It's as simple as that. The condition of sharing or having certain attitudes and interests. That is what a community is. And you can be a community in anything. You spend a lot of time at work. We're all knowledge workers, and we all spend time in complex environments, and those are our communities. When we're at home, that's our community. If you're a church-going person, that's a community. If you play board games like me, that's another community. Everything is a community. The next one is, what is an ecosystem? These two get confused sometimes. They should not be. An ecosystem is the environment in which you find yourself. Okay? So a biological community of interacting organisms and their physical environment, a complex network of interconnected systems. That is what a community, that is what an environment is. And the last one is you. You're awesome, obviously. Kudos to you. You're a complex system of interdependent parts with feelings and stuff, and those feelings are important. And that's really where you start hitting the difference between being in a team and being in a community. Because in a community, feelings matter. The things that make you human matter. So let's just have a quick look. If we're looking at what is a community can be the whole ecosystem. If you've ever spent time in the roller coaster that is a startup, then you will know that everyone feels the same about this thing we're trying to do. And it's actually easy to build communities in startups, in the beginning anyway, because everyone's sort of pulling in the same direction with the same interest, and they're all trying to get the same thing done. So you, me, Cole, Joe, Tess, Dave, Thule, we're all doing the same thing. So the ecosystem can be the community. It's possible. But what happens in our lives if we work in complex environments, such as banks or whatever else there might be out there, you start finding that the ecosystem is so large that it's impossible to maintain a small community. So what happens is we create smaller communities that we become part of. Those are our teams. That's the spaces in which we function, right? I would like to point something out before we get into why communities are important. This is why we seek out communities. Human beings in general, and we might have noticed this with the plague, were not really well built for isolation. There's lots of experiments that were done back in the day about isolating humans. We don't do too well under extreme isolation, okay? It messes with us badly. It's not good for us. And isolation comes in different forms. We're not just talking about you being alone in your house the whole day. There's nothing worse than being in a space or surrounded by people and feeling isolated. I remember this feeling the first time I stepped out of a train in Brussels Central Station, and I realized that I'm in a different country where no one speaks my language, and I felt extremely isolated with thousands of people around me. It was the weirdest feeling. It was like, this isn't my community. So it's an interesting thing that isolation actually takes on different forms. The second one is it's unnatural for us to not communicate when we're in groups. And this is not an introvert-extrovert thing. This is just us communicating. When we're placed in a group, we actually want to express ourselves. Whether you are doing it through verbalizing what you're thinking or what you're feeling, or whether you're doing it through body language, we communicate all the time. Technical difficulties. Did I step on something? Oh, there we go. Yes, we're back. Awesome sauce. Good job, tech team. You have to give kudos when they fix it. That's important, right? They're a community and they're fixing stuff. That's amazing. And the last one is a sense of belonging or purpose. You'd be surprised how difficult it is to be your best self, and I know that sounds very, very cliche, when you don't understand why you are somewhere or what it is that you're there to do. Like, it's basically impossible to wake up every morning, go somewhere, or start up your computer and be productive if you don't know why. So, in order to start looking at building strong communities, I would like to point two things out. Strong communities require fun and safe, and you can't make those. Okay? You can't make fun and you can't make safe. You can do stuff that makes an environment safe, and you can do stuff that makes an environment fun, but there's no magic bag of safe that I can throw over, and this is not safe with a small e, by the way. That's a whole different thing. You can't take a bag of safe and just throw it over something and suddenly everyone feels, I can relax now. I feel safe in this environment. It doesn't work that way. Safe and fun are products. You can make something safe. So if you were to take a mine, for example, you make a mine safe by following mining standards. There are document standards written for what safety in a mine looks like. You apply the standards, you make the mine safe. It is a result of taking other actions. So what can we do in our spaces? Well, if you start looking at things like having a fail-friendly environment, or some people call it a fail-safe environment, you look at something like learning first, positive accountability, those elements make something safe. Now, for those of you who don't know what the difference is between positive accountability and fail-friendly, it's okay to experiment. It's okay to make a mistake. It's completely okay for that mistake to blow up. Then we treat it positively. That's fail-friendly. But the person who ran the experiment, you have a responsibility to say, it was me, and this is what we've learned. That's positive accountability. It's not about witch hunting. It's about saying, I will take responsibility for making sure that everyone gets to learn from the mistakes that I've made. Snap je wel? No Dutch speakers in the room? Oh, just me then, checking. You can't make an environment fun. I can throw as many bottles of vodka at you as I want. I can throw as many beanbags at you as I want. It ain't going to make your environment fun. What makes an environment fun is when you find a space where you become part of it, and through becoming part of it, you find stimulating ways of working. And once, especially knowledge workers that work in complex environments like us, once we find our work stimulating, then we're actually starting to have fun. Then you want to be there because it's something that you enjoy. It makes sense. So if there's no stimulation, it becomes very, very difficult to have fun. Simple. Communities are built on the following principles. Oh, I've got a lovely analogy for this. So, establishment of community standards and a reason for existing. So imagine we had, one of those old Western towns? Like with a corral and stuff? I love those old Westerns. Imagine if you were the new person driving in. I've been working on my horse sound, by the way. I felt it was pretty good. I felt that was a pretty good horse. So you're riding into town. And before you go into town, there are two signs up, two big signposts. One reads, sheriff, name, deputy's name, bartender, name. Bartenders are normally the product owners, by the way. They're grumpy and they feel like they're working very hard, but in actuality, it's a hell of a lot of fun to be a bartender. And then you've got all of these other people's names, and these are town folk. And next to every name is what they do. How amazing is that? I've learned every single person in this town, and I haven't even spoken to someone yet. And on the other board, there's a thing that says, this is what we do in this town. We make vodka out of potatoes, right? And we make our own bottles, and we label them ourselves, and this is what we accept, and this is what we don't accept, and this is how we like to be treated, and this is what we do for fun. Community standards, okay? Imagine if you're the new person in that town, how much easier entering that community is if you actually know what is going on. So I can walk up to the sheriff, or I can walk up to anyone actually and ask them, where's Joe Schmo? And they'll tell me, Joe Schmo's over there by the potato guys. And I can walk to Joe Schmo, who's the sheriff, and I can tell the sheriff, hi, I'm new. And the sheriff could be like, welcome. Why? Because we put those rules up onto our town before new people showed up. We made it easy for them to come in. Click. There we go. There is also something called a concerted effort of investment. So you have to make a concerted effort to invest time in the community from both sides. The new person and the people established in the community, because that's how we integrate. But a new person who comes into town and doesn't take time to invest in that town, it's going to be a really rough ride for you. You have to put the time in to become part of the community. You have to expose yourself, not like that. You have to expose yourself. You have to be open and honest. You have to show empathy towards what the town struggles are. And the town has a responsibility to do exactly the same for you. So from both sides of the fence, there is a concerted effort to invest time. Click. The creation of a fail-friendly environment. We've spoken about this before. So let's say that a new guy's been in town for a while now, and he's got his boots dirty, and he's working in the potato place, right, where they farm potatoes. And he gets this bright idea. I want to try and make green potato vodka. And he goes and talks to the people who make the vodka mash, and he tells them what he wants to do, and they're like, we ain't never made green potato vodka, boy. But he's like, I want to try it. And they're like, well, let's try it and see what happens, because we've never done it before, right? The experiment runs, the vodka gets created, it gets a whole new label, it's in a bottle, we have it, we taste it, we spit it out because we realize it's nothing more than paint stripper. The experiment failed. It's a bad bottle of vodka. A fail-friendly environment looks at that and goes, is it a new product because it could strip paint off of buildings? Or are we just learning that we shouldn't make vodka out of green potatoes? But the idea is that the failure is treated as a positive effect. And it is new guy's responsibility to now, as he progresses through the community, go, never use green potatoes to make vodka, because it doesn't work. Right? And what did we learn out of this? If you take the potatoes out of the ground too soon, there's this and this and this that goes wrong, the mash comes out wrong, it doesn't matter what you do after that, you can't make vodka. The whole process is understood, no one's been shot, and we've all learned something. That's the idea behind a fail-friendly environment. A finite understanding of responsible ownership, we just spoke about it, being able to say, I'm the guy who, 1, 2, 3, back. No, yes. Close enough. I'm the guy who made the mistake, and I will help the community learn from that mistake. Take that responsibility. A specific interest and integration of self. This is again one of those things where when you're the new person and the thing you want to learn about is bottle labeling, find that specific community and integrate yourself into it. Tell them, I would like to be part of the group of people that create labels and put them on bottles. That's what I would love to do. That's what I'm passionate about. Be honest about what you're passionate about, and then see how the community responds to that. A positive community will welcome you and say, cool, let's try you out as a bottle labeler. You've never done it before, you might suck at it, but let's see. A negative community would go, we've got enough bottle labelers, go pick potatoes, because potato picking isn't that hard. Or so they think. Green potatoes are bad vodka potatoes. You got to know your potatoes before you pick them. And then establish a culture of empathy. I cannot explain to you how important it is for empathy to be a part of every piece of the community that you've got. If there is no empathy, we have got some serious problems, and I'll explain why. Old demons, they die hard. Empathy is the way to make room for integration of self. If the community has no empathy for the fact that you are new, you are not going to be able to integrate successfully. If you have no empathy for the community's existing problems and shortcomings, you will not integrate successfully. Empathy, it goes both ways, but it is super important. When empathy in the community allows people to be honest about their needs. Now, this is where we're going to take it a bit slower. We're going to just put the cowboys away for a moment and talk some serious stuff. This is something that is not taken seriously enough in a lot of teams. A lot of people suffer from a lot of different things: anxiety, cluster headaches, depression, imposter syndrome, fibromyalgia, you name it. Everybody's got a condition these days. And I'm not saying that to be funny, I'm saying that because it's true. We work harder hours, we work longer hours, we don't take enough time for ourselves, and we develop issues. And we need to be honest about those issues. I myself suffer from depression. And some days it's absolutely crippling. I have a difficult time rolling my backside out of bed, but I do it because I'm in a community where I feel welcome. And that's one of the reasons I wake up in the mornings, is to go be part of that community again. But it's not easy. And I've had the opportunity to be completely open and honest about what I need in order to survive in this space. And it's been met because I'm lucky enough to be in a community where empathy is practiced actively and with passion. But that's the kind of stuff where we need to be starting to become really honest about what it is that we need out of the people that we work with every day, because we spend more time with them than we spend with our own families. So where do you think your empathy is coming from? I'm loving this. It's like Elvis Dumbledore. It's giving me time to breathe. Yeah, I like it. Okay. Being open about your needs, you'd be surprised. It is, A, very brave of you to do that. B, probably the single most scary thing I've ever done in my life is when I had to call up the person that's actually sitting in the room. I had to call them up and say, I have a problem and I need help. And I needed to be really honest about what was going on. So that allows, being open about your needs allows the community to show you empathy, but also to become more accommodating to what is your specific requirement. Having empathy for people's needs helps to build trust and safety. Oh, look, another thing that improves safety. Yay, empathy builds safety and trust. If you ever break that, though, it's broken forever. You can't fix that. Like, once it's broken, it's broken. So please don't break it. Having trust and safety allows for exponentially fast learning growth. If I'm not afraid to do experiments, if I'm not afraid to take a chance, if I'm not afraid to do something new and out of the box, then I'm innovating. And if I'm innovating in an environment where I don't feel unsafe to innovate, well, guess what happens? We're exponentially learning faster, not just how to do stuff, but how not to do stuff. Right? That's equally important. So, why is a community important? Why are communities important? What we are part of is key in shaping our knowledge, feelings of safety, and communication styles. What we are part of. That's an important thing to understand. What am I a part of? What is our vision and mission? What are we trying to achieve? What am I part of? I'm part of a town that makes vodka out of potatoes. Okay, but it goes deeper than that. Like, what is my specific role in this town? Who we are part of is key in shaping our vision and mission. We just covered that. And where we belong is key part of shaping our identity, trust, and safety. You feel safer in a community because you have an identity, right? People that accept you for who you are, but really accept you for who you are. And I'll know because my personality is just super weird. It is so super weird. And people accept me for who I am. And then I feel, you'll notice there's a couple of people in the audience that know me really well, and they're like, oh, yeah, he's not lying right now. Right now, he's telling the truth. The important thing about community is, or why it is important to have communities, is communities allow us to share the burden. They allow us to learn faster and master our environments quicker. That is why we want communities, not just teams. A community focuses on the shortcomings of the community. It spends time working on itself. When you have a team that applies the 70-30 rule, like 70% working in the team, 30% working on the team, then you don't have a team anymore, you have a community. Well done, congratulations. Because you're not just working in the thing, you're working on it to improve it, to make it better, to make it faster, right? That's a very important part. So I'm going to show you some tools to help you build communities. And the first tool is in communication. So if you know Kevin Trentworthy and Donnie Rue, they came up with a spine model. I'm about to abuse it badly. So if you know them personally, please let them know. And yeah, just go for it. And then they can come and throw a brick through my window. But the spine model works on this following concept. You've got needs, values, principles, and practices. Okay, so the needs are basically the concept of what is it that driving factor inside of you, that almost emotional part that you can't quite explain to people, but it's super strong. That's need. I have a need for something to be in existence. So it is, why is whatever being discussed is important? What does it drive? What drives it? The need. Then you've got the values. Now, the values are the things that we derive from the fact that we have needs. This is the perceived value that we get from feeling good or feeling successful or producing things. Those are our values. Our principles, those are the rules that drive the delivery of value, and our practices are the habits and the actions that drive the value and importance. Now, this is where things get interesting. The bottom two are almost dogmatic. For those of you who don't know what dogmatic means, it's got nothing to do with asterisks and obliques. Okay? It means it's very much established in people's ethos. They feel very strongly about their principles and practices. It becomes habitual eventually. Not habitual, habitual. If it's habitual, then it means it's like plants and stuff. Habitual. So having a conversation, you've got a choice between two. You can either have a why conversation or you can have a what conversation. What conversations are super dangerous, and I'll explain why. When you have a conversation with someone about the reason why they're doing something, and you have a conversation with someone on what they're doing, the way they're doing it, it's two very different things. When you have the what conversation, a lot of the times it feels like you're attacking or questioning their habits, their reason for existing, the reason why they do stuff. So it becomes a combative conversation quite quickly. If you stick to the why and you try and understand what's driving the reason for doing this thing the way you're doing it. So in other words, what's driving the practice? Why did the principle exist in the first place? So you go and talk in the top space and suddenly you understand their world a lot better. And now you can influence the practices and the principles. And now this is where a lot of people make the mistake, especially the new guy in the potato farm. He rocks up and he's like, y'all are farming potatoes wrong. These people have been farming potatoes for decades, for generations, and you want to come in here on week one and tell them they're doing it wrong? You are going to have a tough time for the rest of your life in that town. It is going to be hard. But if you could see that the way they're farming potatoes, 1, 2, 3, and there. If you can see there's something wrong with the way they're farming potatoes, rather ask them, why do you farm potatoes this way? Why have you always farmed potatoes this way? And once they've explained that, then you have an opportunity to say, well, it's interesting because I've actually farmed potatoes this way. And I found that I can get 5 more potatoes out of a barrel than you do. You maybe want to try an experiment and see if we can farm more potatoes. Interesting conversation to have. The next one is a model that Kim Mussman, I don't know, should I be checking my phone now because it's ringing in my pocket? I don't know if people are asking me questions. I'll check it now. So Kim Mussman showed me this model the first time. It was created by Rock, Young, and Pillsbury. It's called the SCARF model. And the SCARF model is called the SCARF model. Oh, excuse me, I need to put my cursor back on the clicky bit. Drive it on the belly. There we go. SCARF. So status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. SCARF. Right? This model is designed to help promote people's position inside of communities. It's to help improve their status, their feeling of belonging. Right? This is how you can apply it actually. So what does status mean? It's the sense of personal worth, where you are in relation to others. And it's really simple to do. Public acknowledgement. Just publicly acknowledging that somebody did something right. It immediately improves their status. It doesn't change pecking order. It's not about who's more important and less important. It's about the fact that I've been seen for doing something good, and that makes me feel good. Right? You'd be surprised how far that goes with people. Certainty, a sense of what the future holds. Now, communities specifically have to be transparent. We all understand that sometimes, like I'm a DL, which means I'm in conversations that the rest of my team is not. And I'm privy to information that is dangerous for my team. They shouldn't know it. We all understand that those rules exist in life. You can't always share all the information. But inside the community, you have to be as transparent as humanly possible. Because what that does is, so you can set clear expectations, setting clear goals, realistic project schedules. All of that gives people a sense of certainty of what the future holds. Once people have a good idea of what the future is bringing, they actually relax about it and they can start planning ahead. The human mind is a wonderful thing. I mean, you give it an idea today and you let it incubate for a couple of weeks and you have a solution by the end of the month. You'd be surprised. You don't have to tell somebody start working on it today. Just tell them what's coming down the pipeline. And their brains will work on it for you. We're knowledge workers. We never stop working. Well, unless we're comatose from drinking too much of our own vodka. But that's not the point. Autonomy, the sense of control over our own lives. Now, it's really simple to give people autonomy in a community. Just give them some choice. What do you want to do? Why do you want to be involved? How do you want to be involved? Right? And a lot of companies think that that's ridiculous and you can't do it, but that's not true. You can. We just have to understand that it happens within a certain set of rules, right? Like, you can't be in a team and then say, I'm going to become a professional juggler. Well, this community doesn't need professional jugglers. You might need to find a different community. Just putting it out there, right? It's within certain constraints. But yeah, provide people with choice, delegate work, give them self-responsibility and empowerment. Allow them to do things for themselves. Allow them to make experiments. Relatedness, the sense of safety with others. Friendly gestures. When is the last time you had a friendly gesture? On Zoom, it's really hard. I just hug people because that's who I am. These days, I need to be a little careful because not everyone's a hugger. I'm looking at you, Megan. Foster socializing and mentoring programs. I had the most beautiful comment about this at the Cape Town event. One of the participants in the audience said that what they do is they spend 5 minutes on a Zoom call just talking. Like, this is what I did this weekend, or this is what I'm going to do today, or my dog's sick, or whatever it is. And what that does is it actually breaks that barrier between just working and you actually start to get to know the person better. And you'd be surprised what that does in return, because what that does in return is it gives you the opportunity to actually do something for that other person. You'd be surprised how well that works, you know. Fairness, a sense of what is impartial and just, and this is where it becomes super important. The community has to prove that it is transparent, open in its communication, and candidness and clear rules. This I cannot stress enough. The community must be transparent as humanly possible. What can you do today in order to help build a better community? Take a chance and be open about your needs. Focus on being honest, even if it's just with one person. It is a scary, scary thing to do, but try it, even if it's with just one person. If you're in a community, be empathetic towards your colleagues. Try to be approachable and accommodating. If someone is going to take the chance to be open, then for goodness sake, be ready. All right? If you feel like it's too much for you to handle or you don't know how to help them, then just say that. Be honest. But be empathetic towards the fact that somebody opened themselves up to you and wanted you to be part of their world. When failure occurs, be positive about the situation. We don't focus on the failure. We focus on the failure, not the person. I used to watch Formula One a long time ago, and then I sort of grew out of it because I just couldn't see cars running, and it's like, I'm over it. But there was a very famous team who had a very specific way of handling failure. They saw every failure as an opportunity to improve. Doesn't matter whose mistake it was. Driver, mechanic, engineer, team manager, they did not care. Their only goal was to say, how do we improve from this failure? Very important part is that fail-safe environments. Invest time in building relationships. That's what we just said. Spend time with people, pairing, chatting, making mistakes. Even if it's just randomly, I do this a lot. Like, I'll just randomly send people Slack messages like, hey, I was thinking about you last night. I just want to know how you are. I can see 2 or 3 people smiling because they know I've done that to them before. Like, that's how I am. That's how I build community, is I reach out through Slack and I'm like, hey, how are you doing? And sometimes people will say, I'm fine, please don't do this, it's creepy. And other times they'll be like, yeah, I'm cool, man, no worries, how are you? Da, da, da. So sometimes it turns into a conversation, and sometimes they go onto my do not contact list. It's okay, it's part of who we are, right? Help to define the interest and the reasons for the community to exist. Why are we here and what are we doing? There is nothing worse than being in a community and not being empowered enough to be able to help shape why that community exists in the first place. Like, that's a super important thing to do. And then lastly, and this is for me the most important one, and I can't remember who said it, I think it was a boxer, I don't know, but be the person you needed when you were the new person. Like, if you can do that inside of the spaces that you operate in, you will make a huge, huge, huge difference to people's lives. Just be that person that you needed when you were the new person. By the way, we're hiring. So if you want to check out what we've got available, scan the QR code. We're looking for senior engineers, people who want to work on projects that are cool and sort of determine their own worlds in an extremely flat structure. So that's what we're looking for. And if you want to get in contact with me, you can scan that for my profile. I'm not seeing any phones coming out, so I'm assuming this is okay. And you can just hit me up at Werner Smit at equalexperts.com, or you can catch me outside by our booth, yeah? Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Yes?
What are your thoughts on handling when there's tension between certainty and transparency?
When there's tension between certainty and transparency. So are we talking in the sense of, oh, do you need to speak into the mic so people at home can hear?
Apparently. So the question is, in the SCARF model you mentioned certainty as well as transparency. My question is around what are your thoughts on when, so you mentioned as well that there are certain times where you can't be too transparent. So what are your thoughts on handling that kind of conflict?
So the strangest thing is that I've always been very transparent with my team about the fact that I can't be transparent about this. And I know that sounds absolutely ridiculous, but at least that gives people certainty that they understand that unfortunately there's information that I have right now that I cannot share with you because it was shared with me in confidence. And I promise you, as soon as that information can be shared, I will share it. But give them that certainty that this is what's going on.
Thank you.
The microphone to the front, please, sir. The microphone is coming. Or I can come really close to your face, Ander, and you can just talk into my mic. Okay.
I had a situation once where I came into a team and I saw some problems, and I knew obviously I couldn't say you're doing everything wrong because there's, to some degree everything was working, except I was worried about at some point in the future this is all going to collapse.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit different to saying, hey, try this and you'll have better results, because it's kind of like proving a negative. Because if they did it better, they wouldn't see a problem, but they're not seeing problems today either.
Yeah. So
how would you deal with something like that?
So that's a tricky one, because it's impossible to show people. Have you ever heard about Plato's cave? So that the answer to your question is Plato's cave. So for those of you who don't know, Plato's cave is, how do you tell people that it's okay to go outside the cave if the only thing they've ever known is the inside of the cave? They were born there, they were raised there, their parents and their grandparents died there. They've always been in the cave, right? So how do you prove to people that it's okay to go outside if they don't know that outside A exists and B isn't dangerous? Anyone try to guess on that one? You have to go outside the cave. You have to be that first brave person, do the experiment. Pterodactyl might eat you, pterodactyl might not eat you. You might survive the outside world. Then you have to come back with evidence. Something that will entice them to at least think about going outside. And then be brave again, go outside again, bring back more evidence. So you're continuously bringing back evidence that there is a different way to exist. And evidence-driven conversations are far more playful and far more successful than argumentative conversations. Good enough? Awesome. Yeah?
Hi, Werner. Thank you. That was a really cool talk.
Thank you very much.
I'm actually a community builder myself.
I know.
Not a dev, so I'm the one.
I was very worried about your questions because I'm like, no!
It was really interesting. I'm so curious to know, obviously building at scale, and you are building both in small teams and then also in bigger teams. There's often, when you're building something, you have to be prescriptive about certain things, like ways of working, tooling, that kind of stuff. But how do you strike the balance between being prescriptive and co-creation from the beginning, and like including the team in that community building? So
there's a couple of ways of doing that. The way that I've found that works the best is creating what we call communities of practice. So in other words, the community of practice is a sort of a group of consulting members that help teams build better ways of describing their own communities. And I found that it's best to have strong community builders as the leaders of those communities of practice, but then have members of the other communities be part of that community, so that you have that constant link in and out. And that community of practice can serve as a sort of a town meeting hall kind of thing. So people come together, they discuss their problems, and those problems are then dealt with by two different sources: the people experiencing the problem and their peers, and the people who are there as, for example, consultants who build teams for a living. And then you strike that balance between what is the best concepts the consultants can come up with versus what are you actually experiencing on the ground. And now everyone learns from that, and they go back into their teams, the evidence from the cave. Okay, and they go back into their teams and they give the information out like that. That's what I would do. Well, that's what I have done.
Thank you. Very agile, like experimental.
Yeah, we like it. We like agile. Yeah. Oh, microphone. Mike. I don't think the guy's name is Mike.
Is your name Mike? No.
No, his name is not Mike.
Thanks, Werner. So, do you have any tips or things that you've tried in a world where most of us live now, where if you're starting a new job, you receive your equipment by delivery, hopefully before your start date.
Yeah,
and then
that'd be
showing
nice.
up to your new work means logging on to a video conference at some point on a certain date. How do we bring those people into the community, into the town, to feel safe, to feel productive, have fun, all of the good stuff?
Okay, so this is an interesting one, because what you're technically talking about is a walled community. So there's nothing worse than having those 2 signs up outside of the town. I love that sound. Having those 2 signs up, but the wall is so high that no one can come in. Like, you have to scale the wall before the community even knows you exist. Like, what's the point in that? So a good, solid conversation about onboarding is really important. Like, how do we onboard? The second one is, I strongly suggest wear a funny hat. I'm not even kidding right now, because it starts a conversation. And the last one is to be what's the right word? Vulnerable in your first interactions with people. Really try to express who you are and try to elicit from them who they are. Like, not just about, I'm a front-end dev, like, duh, I can read that in Slack. And I click on your profile and I know what your telephone number is as well. That's not the point. Who are you? Oh, my name is Barry and I like to go fishing. Awesome, I hate fishing, but tell me more about it. Maybe I'll turn into a fisherman, you never know. Fisher person, is that the correct term these days? I don't know. Does that give you a good, solid answer? Yeah? The microphone. Merci beaucoup.
Testing? Oh, okay.
Yeah, testing.
Thanks for the talk, by
That's
the way.
a pleasure, bud.
Is it healthy to have different teams in a community? For example, we had a scenario whereby there was a leader of one UI team, and there was a backend team. And some people in the 2 teams didn't gel along, but we produced the required MVP at the end. Is it healthy going forward? Because it hasn't stood the test of time. So that's why I'm asking, is it healthy?
It is a good structure to have those teams in the same community because they're interdependent. The farmers, the bottle makers, the bottle labelers, the distillers, the people who do the taste testing, that's probably the job I would go for, just saying. Like, it's important that they're all forming part of the same community, but there are problems inside of communities that need to be solved. So you've got an inter-community problem that needs to be solved. And once that's made healthy, the community becomes healthy. And what you've said now, it's an easy indicator that there is a problem in the way the community's ways of working have been worked out, because there's obviously a gap in conflict resolution understanding. How do we resolve conflicts in our community? So yes, I believe it is healthy to have all of them there, but I think there is a lack of understanding of how we handle conflict, and that's probably handled by your ways of working. Cool. How much time do I have left? Am I supposed to be out of here? Let's quickly check on Slack. If there's no more questions in the room, what track is this? Track 3? Oh, thank you so much. Question, whoa, hold on. Great talk, Werner. Awesome talk. Brussels, very long time ago. Yes, it was. Skulk. Skulk is watching. Oh, awesome. Okay, cool. Here we go. Question. Anele has a question. When investing in building relationships in the workplace, how could you avoid overstepping boundaries or your gestures being misunderstood? Very difficult to do that, Anele, because not everyone communicates the same way. So I would suggest start small and work your way up. So don't go for the hug the first time you meet someone, but go for a good firm fist bump or a good firm handshake, I would suggest is probably a good idea. But it is do everything in small increments and see what people are comfortable with. Next one from Kirsten. Question, what do you do when you need conflict with what the team needs or what their system and procedures need? What do you do when what you need conflicts with what the team needs or what their systems and procedures need? Okay, that becomes a value conversation. So needs are important, but we have to look at what the values are that are being produced. And if we can almost, if I want to say this right, if we can almost prioritize our values, that doesn't lessen your need. It doesn't make it any less valuable or any less important than the other people's needs. But as a business, we need to function. And as a business, we need to make valuable decisions based on value. So we need to look at what's the most valuable thing to do and try and see if we can't find a good balance or a good compromise between the needs and the value that it produces. Robert, how do you deal with imposter syndrome? Robert, how do you deal with imposter syndrome? I don't deal with imposter syndrome well at all. I get really paranoid, and sometimes I need to talk to people about, am I being paranoid or not being paranoid? And that really is the only way I've ever found of dealing with imposter syndrome effectively, is reaching out to people and saying, I really feel out of my depth. I started a new gig 3 months ago, no, it's not that long. 1 month ago, yeah, 6 weeks ago. And for the first 3 weeks, I felt like I was drowning. It was just gray, an ocean of gray cats that I had to herd. And I eventually reached out to people that I know, and I said, listen, this is what I'm feeling, and I know I'm supposed to be able to do this. And there was that empathy that said, Werner, just breathe, dude, calm down. What have you done so far? Now, I've done this, this, and this. Okay, you've done a lot. It will take time, and that's just that reminder to say you're okay. Hopefully you have someone like that you can reach out to actually give you that feedback. What do you do when there isn't team buy-in to create community? Resign, I think, is probably a good option. I'm not even going to lie about that. It's when people don't want to be in a better position, you have to ask yourself one of two questions. Is it because they don't understand, or is it because they are unwilling? If it is because they do not understand, then we can still do something about this. We can educate, we can bring evidence, there is things we can do to help them understand. If they are unwilling, I would recommend finding a different place to work. Do you have any suggestions to how to deal with developer silos? Front end speaks to front end and DB speaks to DB. Yes. Community practices. It is very important for the community to get together and work on stuff. In other words, pair on working on the community problems. That's a very good way of breaking down silos. So not pairing to work in the community, pairing to work on the community. So pair a front-end person with a DB person to do the next social for the community, or to fix the next problem for the community, or to go and investigate why our Jira is always in a mess. I found that doing that, because it's not always just the Scrum Master's job, by the way. Sometimes the team has to learn how to do stuff for themselves. So that's how I would deal with it. Zukisa, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I do apologize if I'm not. How do you balance integrating new members into your community versus building their skill sets and still maintaining a good output as a team? Well, you do that by understanding that any new person that joins is going to cause disruption, and disruption always means that output might be affected. And you communicate that up front. So you create the room and the time for the new person to actually become part of the community. So that's something that is discussed within the community, to say, there's a new person on their way. We know it's going to be disruptive. Who is putting their hand up to be, for example, the mentor on our ways of working? Who is putting their hand up on skills mentoring? Who's putting their hand up on social mentoring? And then divide those sort of tasks, or those, I almost want to say vocations, between the team, and that would actually integrate someone a lot faster if you do that. So that's what I would do. And that was the last question on the track. Thank you very much, everyone. It was awesome.